Then depending on the business, there might be some other benefits. So for example, if you're a B2C business, I think the future, everyone understands, lies in personalization.
Hello world, this is BetterTech, a podcast where we chat with some of the most successful leaders about the latest industry developments. So join us as we explore the world reliant on tech. This episode is brought to you by Tkxel, a leading software development company. Check them out at Tkxel.com. We're joined today by Dr. Stylianos Kampakis, CEO of the Tesseract Academy and Data Science Advisor at London Business School, and Haseeb Khan, Director of Innovation and Technology at Tkxel. You're listening to BetterTech, and without further ado, let's listen to our guests.
Hey Stylianos, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thanks. So before we take a deep dive into the technical discussion that we are going to have, why don't you go ahead and give the audience a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I'm a data scientist. I live in London, United Kingdom. I've been in the area of data science and AI for a long time. I'd say it must be about a decade now. I have a PhD in machine learning, and I'm involved in various ventures. But for the most part, my work is around explaining data science and AI to decision makers and helping companies utilize these technologies. People can learn more about me on my website, thedatascientist.com. And I've also recently published a book on that topic called The Decision Maker's Handbook to Data Science, which is available on Amazon by A-Press.
Mm-hmm. That sounds wonderful. Thanks for the quick introduction. So we can now go ahead and discuss the topic that we have, which is the 5 reasons AI is crucial to business growth in 2020. So before we jump into the topic and discuss that in greater detail, can you tell to the audience what AI is and what it is not? Like, for example, there are a lot of misconceptions of what AI is, and everyone in this world is sort of has their own definition. So in your opinion, what do you think AI is and what it is not?
I think this is a great question, and it's a question I'm asked very often. For example, many people confuse AI with machine learning, or they confuse deep learning with AI. So I'd say that artificial intelligence might not be so much of a scientific field as more of an end goal. Yeah, so it's a vision which was originated in the 50s. The vision was to create a thinking machine. And since the 50s, we've seen many approaches to realizing this vision. And the latest approach, the latest iteration in AI is machine learning, where machine learning is about creating algorithms which can learn from data. So for the most part, what most companies refer to as AI, it's really machine learning algorithms which are very good at very specific jobs. And the reason that people are using the word AI is largely for marketing purposes. It just sounds cooler. But if you talk with experts, everyone knows that we don't really have anything that really resembles true AI currently. That being said, these terms have been used and abused so much that many people are comfortable saying, oh, we're using AI or we're talking about AI, even when in reality everyone knows, it's not AI, it's more like a machine learning algorithm doing something very specific.
Okay, that explains it. So, in this age of AI and machine learning, data is sort of the most important thing because that is something on which AI operates, and machine learning also sort of helps and learn, and then algorithms take intelligent decisions on the behalf of business decision makers, as we have said. So, from a data scientist perspective, how important it is to have the data in place on which these decisions can be made?
Well, that's super important because you'd rather have the right data and a good amount of data and use a very simple algorithm to analyze this data rather than have a team in place of world-class data scientists without any data. So for me, I'd rather, if I had to choose, I'd rather have the first. I'd rather have, an amazing data set and, a very simple method to analyze it than have a world-class team with no data. And it's one of the reasons that in my work, be it like workshops or my blog or my book, I talk a lot about data management, about data strategy. And many companies, they're trying to undergo, for example, a digital transformation, and they're just not ready. Maybe the data is not in the right format. Maybe they're not collecting the right kinds of data. There are all kinds of issues. It's just that many times companies are carried away by all the hype that's surrounding AI and machine learning. They're carried away by deep learning, by cool-sounding algorithms. But in reality, it's better if you just have, let's say, a dashboard that's based on quality data rather than a really cool algorithm which is not based on anything.
Okay, thanks for that information. So, be it any field in computer science, be it like data structures, databases, data warehouse, or whatever we call it, there are two sides of things. One is the academic side, the other one is the practical side, which is sort of applied on the industrial side, right? So how do you see AI being incorporated and implemented in sort of different industries, ranging from education to healthcare and to software and like other related fields?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I believe that from one industry to the next, the algorithms are more or less the same. I think the most prominent example of this is deep learning, which can be used in many different, it's used basically in countless applications, from autonomous vehicles to healthcare. The differences from sector to sector are not on the algorithmic level, but they might be on the cultural level, on the kind of data that is being used. So something that's very interesting for me is seeing some sectors which might be 10-year ahead of other sectors in terms of, the implementation of AI. And essentially, as I see AI going from one vertical to the next, the algorithms are still the same. It's just whether, the upper management and other people within organizations, they accept that, okay, this is valuable, this is how we should use it.
Right. So now we can jump into the crux of the topic that we have today. So what, in your opinion, is the 5 ways or 5 reasons why AI is crucial to business growth in 2020? What do you think?
So I think there are quite a few reasons. The main driver basically is there's like one key driver, which is automation. That everyone's been talking about automation, and rightly so, because AI is going to play a key role in automating many processes within various industries. And I was reading some reports, like there was this report by PwC that AI and the automation is going to add billions in the world economy, etc. And essentially, it's a bit of an arms race because if your competitors are going to do it, you have to do it as well. So it's not only about growth; it's also about a competitive advantage. Yeah, so that's like one major factor. Then another like a key, key part in growth and how AI is going to help companies achieve growth is that companies which are in industries where prediction plays a role, they're going to be disrupted. So if, for example, you depend upon weather predictions, upon financial forecasts, you care about forecasting demand or whatever, we have algorithms which become better and better in prediction. So that's also going to be very disruptive. Again, this doesn't apply to all industries, and everyone is very much focused on automation. But for me, that is equally important. That industries where disruption plays a role, that where forecasting plays a role, they're going to be disrupted. They're going to see improvements basically in the margins and efficiency. So these are like the 2 key factors. And then say there are other like factors which are going to facilitate this transition to an AI world. So one such factor is the fact that we see many commoditized APIs, which are getting better and better. So whereas in the past, you needed to have, let's say, very skilled data scientists to build machine learning models. Now there are like services by Google, IBM, which can let you do all sorts of things, from computer vision to analyzing data in a tabular format. So that's one. And also I think open source helps with this. Now we have like many good open source tools so that even, let's say, software developers who are not really trained in machine learning or data science, they can still quite often build some basic applications. So in general, let's say that it just becomes easier to use data science, even in businesses where data science might not be essential, but a nice to have. So if, for example, you are an online retailer and you don't consider really machine learning or data science a key component of your business, but you're like, oh, it would be good if I could have some forecasts. Now it's very easy to do it. You might not even have to hire someone. So we suddenly see like data science being available to also smaller organizations, whereas a few years ago maybe that wasn't the case. And again, in terms of how this assists growth, for me, it's about automation in various processes. And then it's about making more accurate predictions.
Right. Got it. So in this age, blockchain is also a sort of very emerging concept where sort of people are talking about like distributing the data using blockchain and its related technology. So what do you think how AI and blockchain can be coupled together in order to create a more secure distributed infrastructure for storing information on the cloud or otherwise?
Yeah, so there are a few ways to go about this, and obviously there's no standard solution yet because blockchain is still in its relatively early days. So one way to do this is by using something like IPFS, the Interplanetary File System, which essentially it's something between a blockchain and GitHub, let's say, in Dropbox, a system which allows people to share their data on a blockchain and at the same time audit the trail of transactions around this data and give permission to the people and the organizations they want to give permission to. So that's like a great idea for data sharing. And then obviously we have smart contracts where AI has a clear, there's a clear application for AI in this case, because smart contract, you can use AI to see whether some conditions are satisfied.
Right.
And now, whether this is going to be more secure or not, it really depends on the context. I think that one of the issues with many good blockchain ideas is that let's say around data collection, is that you might have an element that's outside of the blockchain which we have no control of. So let's take supply chains, for example. There are many companies investing in supply chains for blockchain and using blockchain. And when you have a supply chain, it makes sense to use blockchain to record everything that takes place, and it makes it easier to audit. And maybe you have some smart contracts, and you use a computer vision system to track the transfer of goods, etc. But if within this chain there is someone you need a human to record a piece of information at some point in this chain, then this is a weak, basically this is a weak spot, because maybe the human makes a mistake, and it's very difficult to fix this. But if that's not the case, if there are no components outside of a blockchain, then it's very easy to see how, for example, you could automate this. Maybe I can imagine a world where you have, let's say, Internet of Things, a computer vision systems, a supply chain based on AI, which they make sure that they track all the goods that are being transferred.
Right. So, as you mentioned in the intro, that you have written a book for, teaching AI to non-technical people, right? Especially executives. So, if we talk from a high-level perspective, what are the three main things which you think executives having no technical background should consider while incorporating AI into their business?
Yeah, so I think it comes down, first of all, to greater efficiency. Yeah, so it's first of all, it's very important to understand that now data collection is easy and it's cheap. Yeah. So if you have a business and you're like even at a small scale or medium scale and above, it's very easy. You're probably generating lots of data. And it's very easy to capture this data. Yeah. And you have lots of processes. So any process which you have, you can probably improve it in some, we can measure it, you can improve it in some way, and maybe you can even automate it in some way. So this is where AI can basically can provide some low hanging fruit in order to in order to increase your margins, to improve your efficiency. Then, depending on the business, there might be some other benefits. So, for example, if you're a B2C business, I think the future, everyone understands, lies in personalization. So, whereas in the past, a business just had to assume that the customers, they are, they're different personas, let's say 2, 3, 4 different types of customers, and these are the people we're selling to. Now everything is bespoke, like marketing is bespoke. The products can be bespoke. Like Netflix, for example, is great in this. They're using data analytics in order to understand what kind of shows they should produce. They're like, okay, what kind of show would our customers like to see? So
and similarly, they have sort of, sorry to cut you, but similarly, they have like sort of also implemented data science techniques to actually figure out what sort of content a particular geographic location users are viewing. And then they are sort of promoting that content into that particular region. So in order to get more subscription and whatnot. Right.
Yeah, and we're talking about the new business model. So on one end of the spectrum, we're talking about improving efficiency, and the other end of the spectrum, we're talking about flipping business model on its head. Yeah, and something that's very important for some industries, like the entertainment industry, is that when you have companies like Netflix, which are not only using data analytics, but they position themselves in a way where they can capture lots of data very easily. It's very difficult to compete against this thing, right? Because if I go to the cinema, a movie, like a studio doesn't really know my profile. They don't know who I am. They need to research to discover who I am. But Netflix knows everything about me. So this places them strategically. It's an amazing move.
Right. So as you have been like working into this area for quite some time now and have significant experience of like teaching people, writing books, as well as working in the industry across various domains. So what do you think are some of the tips for hiring, retaining a team of data scientists or machine learning or AI engineers?
So I think one of the best tips I can give to an executive is to, first of all, start with a use case and make sure you're ready for data science. I think one of the most common mistakes I've seen is companies not being ready for data science. Maybe the data is of not good enough quality. They don't know what they're looking for. And they're like, we're going to hire someone to solve this problem for us. And then this person that is hired feels lost. And eventually they might end up quitting the company. So there's some work which a company needs to do before they hire someone. And that's also very important because right now there's lots of demand for data scientists. So if a data scientist is not happy in a company, they're just going to find a job elsewhere. So it's very important to do this preparatory work. Secondly, it's very important to understand that data science is a diverse field. So you can have people with a background in machine learning, statistics, and physics, whatever. So you can have people with very different skill sets. And again, if you don't know what you're looking for, maybe you're going to end up with the wrong person. So once you make sure that you have a use case in mind and the data is in a good state and you know who you're looking for, then you're looking into a very fruitful collaboration where everyone is happy. But if you're not ready in that sense, then you're probably looking in a very bad situation where you're going to end up wasting time and money.
Right. I got it. So, just a follow-up question on this. So, what we have seen in the industry is that people are using AI or machine learning just for the sake of using it. So, if I can give you an example for this, is that just as you said that in order to market themselves as a cutting edge company or a product, they actually use this AI, machine learning, data science terminologies to market their product. So the analogy for this is that they actually use it just for the sake of using it. So, they might be using a tank to kill a sparrow, which is not the
Yeah.
correct, right? So, so in this case, what do you recommend to different executives? Like, when is a good time they should consider like really incorporating AI into their product? What are some of the key ways or key techniques to figure out that now we are okay, AI ready, we should do it?
Yeah, so I think my opinion is that first of all, it's good to prepare for data science from day one of a business, even if you're not planning to implement any data science for 2 years, let's say. The reason I'm saying this is because when you make decisions about, let's say, what kind of database you're going to use, what kind of data you're going to collect, if you don't make the right decisions from day one, these are going to come back and haunt you. Now, given what you asked about, maybe using a bazooka to kill a fly, I completely understand that. But this also comes down to the techniques and the people you hire. So, for example, if if you want to do something very simple, if you just, let's say you're a retailer, online retailer, and you want to recommend your system, maybe you don't need to hire a PhD in deep learning to do this for you. Maybe a software developer can do this using some open source tools. Quite often it comes down to how lean a business wants to be. Unfortunately, executives are not always aware of these matters. So maybe they're like, oh, we need to hire a super expert data scientist to do X, Y, Z. Data science, unfortunately, can seem somewhat esoteric to many people. It's one of the reasons I wrote my book. It's one of the reasons I'm writing lots of articles that try to make data science simpler for executives. Because usually I've seen two extremes, either people having very high expectations, even magical expectations, or the opposite, which is a bit more rare, to think that everything is very difficult. We need to find a super expert to do something which really is very simple. It's rare to find an executive who actually has, the right understanding and expectations as to what's needed and what level.
So, moving forward, what's next in your opinion in the field of data science, AI, or machine learning? How do you see the future of it and it being transformed into the next big thing?
So I think we're going to see the following trends. First of all, I think automated machine learning is going to become very important. I'm doing some work in this area as well, which means that it will be easier to analyze data sets. Essentially, a large part of a data scientist's work will be automated. And Google is also investing heavily in this direction. And this will make machine learning more accessible to more businesses. And secondly, I think we're going to see more work done in reinforcement learning, which is an area of machine learning which many people believe is going to lead to general AI, which is going to be the main theme of the next few decades. Yeah, so people witnessing the progress in AI, in machine learning, they're like, okay, it looks like for the first time in history, we might actually be able to create general AI. So everyone is trying to figure out, okay, what technology should we use? And some people are betting on reinforcement learning. So I think we're going to see lots of money being spent on reinforcement learning in the next few years. But I wouldn't rule out that in 5 years, maybe, we see some other advances. But definitely for the next 10, 20, or 30 years, everything will be pointing towards general AI. And the thing is, the vision becomes more concrete. We'll also see not only companies, but also governments throwing more money at this. As soon as they realize that, hey, there's a very important strategic advantage from many perspectives, but both like economic perspectives, but also military perspective in developing this kind of technology.
Right. So just on a side note, AI has sort of some of the supplementing areas as well. Like, for example, if we talk about development, then we have the DevOps or the development operations role in parallel supporting the development teams. And in AI, there is sort of an emerging area called AI Ops, the artificial intelligence ops. So how do you see this particular area or role becoming a core component of AI or machine learning in the future?
I think this is normal that as companies become more familiar with how to use data science, AI, machine learning, then they also become more efficient and better at integrating these roles within a company. So I think there's nothing new here besides AI and ops. I had also spoken many years ago about the data science architect, which is a similar role. And and a few months ago, I was reading about an article talking about some kind of similar idea. Essentially, as everyone understands where the strong and the weak points of a profession are, then a company can create different specializations in order to better integrate people's work and push this work through the right channels until it's implemented. So I think this is a good idea, and I think we might be seeing some new roles in the next few years as well. So something else I heard recently was the data science product manager, like a product manager who has good understanding of data science and is focused on data products. I'm like, okay, that's a great idea. You have a good understanding of the business. You're also a data scientist, so that's what you're leading, which is a different profile to someone who is doing, research in neural networks in Google.
Right. So I believe that's it from my side. So Stylos, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking our time out of your schedule and talking to our audience and discussing the key ways as well as your experience about data science, machine learning, and AI. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a great conversation.
Thank you, Stylianos and Haseeb, for your valuable time and educating us all about how AI is aiding business growth in 2020. Thanks for listening to this episode by BetterTech. If you enjoyed this podcast, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to share it across your favorite social networking platform. We look forward to bringing you the latest industry news in our next episode. In the meantime, take a look at our other episodes and hit subscribe with the links in the description box below so that you don't miss out on the latest in tech.